Should we do it? All right, I think we'll begin. Welcome to our City Council meeting today. Great to have you here. We'll begin today with an invocation by Tim Martin, representing the St. George Area Interfaith Council, and he is by I think acclamation and forever
Permanent.
the permanent executive secretary or secretary.
Yeah, Secretary General, we decided,
of the
Yeah.
organization. And after the invocation, I've asked Ed Baca if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
And I
Tim?
just want to point out to the members of the council that on their desks are the flyers for two events happening both on November 9th. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the St. George Interfaith Council puts on the Crop Walk, which is communities responding to overcome poverty. We invite people to come, they make a donation. We've raised almost $90,000 over the years with that crop walk. And that money goes locally to the food bank, to Solomon's Porch Sunday Feast. It's just a great event. And we get a great turnout. The mayor kicks everybody off, launches them is the official phrase. Try not to kick, right, yeah. Then that evening, our newest councilman, Councilman Smethurst, will be one of our guests of honor at the Veterans Day concert by the St. George Interfaith Choir. And that's a great event. We'll be bringing many veterans in from the Ivans VA home and wonderful music. You know, it's just a delightful way to spend an evening to launch the Veterans Day weekend. So the Interfaith Council, Interfaith Choir is alive and well. We've added actually 2 members in the last month, so we're at 23 churches. And just having a great time. And we appreciate the support of the council and the city and all the members of the community. So if you join me in prayer, please. Our Father in heaven, we are so thankful this day that we can be in this city council meeting. We're thankful for the spirit that we enjoy, the friendship and the fellowship that comes as we interact with each other, as we interact with our elected officials, interact with those who serve us through the city. We pray a blessing this day in this meeting, that the items that are discussed might be properly presented, that open minds will be ready to receive the information that they might need to make good choices and good decisions and good comments. We're thankful for this wonderful part of this great nation that we live in. We pray a blessing upon all our leaders, that we might all be blessed with good choices and be able to truly enjoy the gifts that we've been given. Now we dedicate this time to Thee and to those who will be laboring, and this is our prayer in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Ed. Appreciate you both doing that for us today. Adam, first of all, let's see, I don't know, Christina, any pre-agenda items today? I don't know of any. Okay, then Adam, any changes to the agenda that's printed?
No, not tonight. No changes.
How about that? All right, well then let's begin with the consent calendar. Adam, any comments?
No, nothing that I would add.
So, council, as normal, if there's anything that you wish to discuss or have pulled off of this consent calendar, you can do so. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to approve the 3 items on the consent calendar.
Mayor, I would move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion by Betty and a second by Jimmy to approve the consent calendar as presented. Any discussion?
I would just ask Mayor to have some input. I think Cameron's there to give us a little bit of an update as to a roundabout as compared to a traffic signal light and the cost factors. They pretty much, do we save the taxpayers a little bit of money by having a roundabout instead of the signal lights?
Pretty similar.
Yeah, the roundabout depends on the situation, depends on where it's at. If you have right-of-way to purchase for either the traffic signal or the roundabout, it could be different. But This one out on 2000 North, it will likely be a larger roundabout, so it'll probably be more money than its traffic signal we're anticipating, but it will move traffic easier because you don't have to stop near as much. And so efficiency for the amount of traffic that we currently have on 2000 North Snow Canyon Parkway will be better.
So people up in Snow Canyon Parkway will be happy to hear that. It'll be a lot prettier, just traffic signals, won't it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for the explanation, Cameron. Any other comments on those items? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Just might mention, we would excuse Councilwoman Michelle Randall, just some health issues she's still working through, but we wish her the very best. She's doing well and is always a trooper with her health issues she's working through. She's been quite public about it, and we appreciate her courage, and she's doing well. Just needed another a day off here today. So next item, Adam, is number 2.
That's correct, and Jenna's going to give a presentation on this for us.
Excellent. Jenna?
So staff is seeking approval of the Program Year 18 CAPER. The CAPER is our annual performance report that we submit to HUD showing what we've done throughout the last program year and how the CDBG funding was used. There was a public comment period open from September 30th to October 14th. Staff did not receive any comments, and then tonight would also be a public hearing. And that's it.
Council, do you have any questions on this? We call it the CAPER report, but it's the abbreviation. It's abbreviated Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report is what it stands for, and you have all the information there on your agenda, either digitally or by paper. But do you have any questions for Jenna or for staff, other staff? If not, thank you, and I will open the public hearing at this time for anyone who may have come to offer input on this item on our agenda. Don't typically have a lot for this item, so I'll close the public hearing, come back to you, council, for your consideration.
Mayor, are we just accepting the report, or?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion to accept the CAPER report for 2018 program year.
Second.
So we have a motion by Jimmy and a second by Betty. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Third item.
Next up is a discussion on possible amendments to the budget. We're about a quarter of the way through the year. Chad is going to take us through the proposed amendments.
Chad, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Yeah, we just have a few budget openings here. The first one is to budget for a new Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, or JAG, to purchase 6 handheld radios for our police department, which will be operable with the upgrades the Utah Communication Authority is making to statewide network, and that's for $17,190. The second item is for unforeseen replacement to a fire department SUV. The old one was a 2004 Dodge Durango, and Fleet has decided, or has determined, that the cost to repair the Durango outweighs the useful life, and so that's for $49,300. The third item is for the airport improvements, to budget for projects which needed to be completed at the airport while the airport was temporarily closed for the runway reconstruction project. The project consists of expanding the terminal ramp area for $193,000, expanding the TSA area for $50,000, and repairing the fuel farm pavement and roadway for $271,000. In addition, this budget opening provides $150,000 to participate in constructing a shared parking lot for future commercial hangars. The projects are funded by $419,000 from the remaining balance in the airport revenue bond, and $245,000 from airport reserve fund accumulated from prior year's excess of the airport's direct revenues over direct expenses, which are restricted to the airport by FAA regulations. And it's anticipated with this shared parking lot that over time will be reimbursed for the hangar sites that are leased. Item number 4 is to increase the contract with the consultant providing public relations and communication for the airport runway repair project due to asking the consultant to increase their services beyond the scope of work originally requested by city management. And that's for $10,000. Number 5 is to complete the Red Hills Golf Course clubhouse, and that's for $37,600 for just to cover change orders needed to improve aesthetics, for unforeseen utility line changes, and for miscellaneous adjustments made during construction. And this increase is about 4% of the overall budgeted approved for this project. Number 6 is for the after-school program for the Nature Center. The original grant that we've used since 2013 ended in June of 2019, and they were able to receive the AMP After-School Match Partnership Grant for $150,000 to provide the after-school program for 3 elementary schools. Originally, we were only doing 1. And then item number 7 is for $404,400. It's to increase the budget from $935,750 to $1,340,150 for the snow removable equipment building at the airport, for which we received 5 bids, which were over the engineer's estimates. An airport improvement program grant from the FAA will pay for almost 91% of the total cost, and the passenger facility charge revenues will cover the remaining 9%. Number 8 is for the Human Resource Division for $31,685 to increase the Resource Department's budget to change a new part-time position approved in HR's budget to a full-time position due to increasing needs for the HR department services. The net cost for this change was $31,685, and originally they were not sure where they would put this person, but they have resolved that and they found a place. So
A closet somewhere?
close.
Adam?
It's the conference rooms right behind us, A and B.
Okay, all right.
Number 9 is to move the budget for the full-time and part-time city office administrative professional positions from the city manager's department to the admin services department. And that began in mid-September. And this is just more in line with the future 311 center. And that's the reason for the move there. Item number 10 is for the Energy Services Department for $630,000. This was to budget to rebuild the transformer and equipment at Twin Lakes substation due to the unanticipated failure of the existing transformer. Number 11 is for $26,000 for the Art Museum. This was an art purchase of $50,000 where the artist agreed to accept payment in 2 installments, with one payment of $24,000 in fiscal year 19 and the second payment of $26,000 in fiscal year 2020. And funding for this year's payment is fund balance accumulated from prior year's revenues. So it's all fundraising dollars. There's no tax dollars used for this. Item number 12 is for $14,500 to increase the budget for the RAP tax grant awards from $250,000 to $264,500 for this current fiscal year at the request of the St. George Arts Commissions Board during the presentation of their recommendations for awards to the City Council.
And we agreed to that as well, just as a reminder, council, if you remember.
Item 13 is the prior year's budget approved $100,000 transfer from the Park Impact Fund to the RAP Tax Fund. So we're just not all of the money was spent. Only 32,000 was spent in fiscal year 19, so we're just moving the rest of that, the remainder of that 100,000 over to fiscal year 20. Items 14, 15, and 16 kind of go together. This, originally we were going to do the Red Cliffs Park drainage, but that is delayed for another fiscal year. And so with that, we're funding 3 other projects, and those are items 14, 15, and 16. So 14 is for $200,000 to budget for the 1525 North Groundwater Drainage Project, which is requested to be funded by, oh, I already said that part. Both of these projects are funded by the utility drainage fees. The next one, item 15, is for $771,180. And this is for the Fort Pierce Wash Maintenance Sediment Removal Project from $390,000 to $1.180,000, increasing it of $771,180, and funding the participation amount from the Washington County Flood Control Authority from $240,000 to $473,180.
You see the other detail in there, council? It is nice to have the participation of the Flood Control Authority, which, let's see, Jimmy, you're on that, and Ed's on that. So it's good to have that participation. Our constituents are paying for that anyway, so it's good to have some of that money coming back to help St. George. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then item number 16, this is to budget for funds for the purpose of acquiring right-of-way along the Virgin River so that the city can maintain the flood area in the vicinity. Funds will provide for an acquisition agent, title cost, and property cost to purchase over 40 parcels. The Washington County Flood Control Authority will fund $186,000 of the cost, and the remainder will be funded by reallocating funds from the Red Cliffs Drainage Project. Item number 17 is the Park Impact Fund to increase the approved budget for the new trail section on Virgin River Trail South, Rustic Trailhead to Spring Subdivision from $445,000 to from $445,300 to $732,447, an increase of $287,147, and expand the scope of work to add drainage improvements to the existing erosion protection. The Washington County Flood Control Authority again will fully fund the increase of the $287,147. And finally, number 18, this is the Transportation Improvement Fund. So recently, Washington County approved the quarter-cent tax, and so we will have, let's see, effective in October, the city will receive, or the county will receive 0.05% and the city will receive 0.1% based on the point of sale to be used towards the transit district, and an additional 0.1% based upon a 50-50 point of sale and population to be used towards transportation projects. Revenues received will be budgeted as general improvements expenditures until specific projects are identified for appropriation.
So Chad, on that last one, and Adam, those are estimates essentially, correct? So we're just taking a fairly conservative approach, because while I think some of the estimates, the more generous estimates were showing over $2 million each, it's probably good to estimate on the low end.
Correct.
So we, plan.
Yeah, those are just
Cautiously.
estimates on the low end.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good. Questions, council, for any of these items before I open the public hearing?
Mayor, I just comment, and for myself and the public listening, on item 11, where we look at the art museums and the purchase of art, just so that folks will know that these funds are committed. They can't be used on other programs such as additional police officers or somewhere else. They're kind of designated right towards the RAP tax
Well,
They
they're
were
actually
fundraised.
donations that we receive specifically for this purpose.
Okay, so they're there, and the same with the airport. Those funds at the airport that they generate can't be used elsewhere. Correct.
Good. Any other comments or questions, council? Thank you, Chad. Excellent job. So I will open the public hearing for anyone who may have come to express input or ask questions on this. Item 3, which is, again, consideration of a resolution to review and approve amendments to our fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. We do this periodically, probably usually about quarterly, as things change, as they do. Even best laid plans need some modification. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, come back to you, council, for any further discussion or for a motion.
Mayor, go ahead, Jimmy.
Oh, you're good.
Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve
I second.
as articulated.
Thank you. Motion made by Ed, seconded by Brian. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, starting with Betty, say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I almost called you Joe, Brian. It might happen a couple times, yeah. Okay, next, number 4.
Okay, item 4 is a public hearing to request consideration of amended final subdivision plat and vacating some of the public utility and drainage easements on the property and adjusting the lot lines between lots 4 and 5 and lots 8 and 9. So this is Commerce Point. Here is Bluff Street. Black Ridge Drive is right here. Oh, right here, sorry. So basically, this is the amended plat. They are requesting to vacate some of the public utilities that were on here. One of them specifically is right here across Lot 4. There was originally a 30-foot easement right through here. The 30-foot easement stays on Lot 5, but on Lot 4, they have requested that to be vacated. It did go through JUC. Each one of the JUC members, as I'm told, provided written verification that they were okay with eliminating that easement right there along Lot 4. They also will have, there's also some concern that these are easements right through here for access and utilities, but there was also some concern that there might be additional utilities installed during construction or so forth that may not end up on it within these areas. The applicant has agreed that basically he's agreed in writing to a certificate of occupancy shall not be issued for a building until owners grant a municipal utility easement to the city in a form acceptable to the city for the as-installed municipal utilities applicable to such building. So if any additional utilities, for instance, Lot 5 right here has the first building that's under construction. If any utilities have to be installed that are need a municipal utility easement, they've agreed to grant those prior to the certificate of occupancy for that building or for any subsequent buildings on those lots.
Questions, council? Jimmy's got one. This TV isn't working here that we look at.
I don't know.
We can't watch the game show or anything.
Sorry.
Nobody caught it except Betty. Yeah. Yeah. Like E.F. Hutton. Whoa.
The mayor said try the on switch.
Yeah.
Is there one there? Did you get it? I don't think there was one in there.
There it is.
Hey,
Perfect.
Shazam.
Love it.
Shazam.
How many city
Thanks.
employees?
Be tough to be without John. Solves the problems.
All right.
So yeah, so just so you're aware, so yeah, that's Lot 4 where they vacated, their request is to vacate that easement along there.
Perfect.
And there were a couple other incidental easements throughout the site that they were vacating.
All right. Any questions?
Wes, this area. It's right for the public to know. I get a lot of questions, what's going on at Hilton Drive and Black Ridge? And this shows that that project right there is going to, this will allow it to continue to move forward, and
Right.
and we'll have some retail shops right in there.
Yep, hopefully so. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Then I need to, well, let's see. We do need to do a public hearing on this one.
Yeah, you do.
So
Correct.
I'll open the public hearing if there are no questions, council, for anyone who may have come to offer input on this item, number 4. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and come back to you, council, for any discussion or for a motion if you're so inclined.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the amended and extended final subdivision plat for Commerce Point Phase 1.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Jimmy and second by Betty. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, starting with Ed this time, say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thanks for the work, everyone, on that. Item 5, Ray?
Item number 5 reads, consider approval of an ordinance changing the zone from R110 to Plan Development Residential on approximately 78.6 acres, and a project review to allow development of Black Ridge Cove, located west of Tech Ridge Development. This is east of Indian Hills Drive, also northeast of Whisper Ridge, and it's approximately 900 south, 700 west. Again, this is item 5, and this will be the zone change. And then to follow up, Wes will present item 6, which is the related hillside to this. So on the screen, again, is just a summary. R110 to PDR is a request, and it's also a review of the master plan, site plan, elevations, renderings, landscaping materials, etc., and again, associated hillside. So this kind of shows a general overview of the area, and then looking closer at that, this is the outline of Black Ridge Cove I'll be presenting, and then here is Tech Ridge that's adjacent to it. This is an aerial if it's helpful, and basically we'll be talking about an area in here, and a general plan, medium density residential, and the R110 zoning. And then this, again, outlines the area. What's different in this graphic is it's kind of showing where it's diagonal. That's really the development within this valley with 2 little hillsides on each side, and then the green area represents open space. There is a master plan booklet for this. It's in your packet. It's about 38 pages. And I'm not going to show all of those, just to make you aware that it's in there, and if you've looked at that. And a lot of the items I'll be covering are contained in this. So generally speaking, this has planning area 1, planning area 2, and planning area 3. And although you saw green on the previous slide, this pinkish area represents the open space. And not to be talked about tonight or ask for any development is this area here. So again, this is in your packet. This shows an overall master plan. It shows detached units, kind of the brown covered roof, and then all of these are attached units. So a summary of that is in planning area 1, 62 detached townhomes, that was the brown roof area I showed. And then planning area 2, 77 attached townhomes, that would be 2- and 3-story. And planning area 3, there would be 66 attached townhomes. And I also put in here some of the recreation areas. Planning area 2 has a Park 1 and Park 3, and area 3 has Park 2. So the total units that are requested is 205. This slide shows taking detached townhomes, 62, attached townhomes, 128, and attached individual alley townhomes, 15, multiplying the number of units by 2. That shows how many garages are being provided for each unit. So the 205 units, you would multiply that times 2, and you end up with 410. So there's 410 garage parking spaces. Guest parking, In the zoning ordinance, 1 guest park is required for every 3 units, so it's a ratio of 1 to 3. But the city council may reduce or eliminate guest parking based upon a recommendation from Planning Commission. So if you take all of the units, it's 205 divided by 3, and it's 68, and they do provide those, and I'll show that. Kind of in addition to it, a little different, is they're trying to provide a lot of green court space to make it nicer aesthetics and for living to be a little more enjoyable, to have green courts. But there's a section of the code that says dwellings that have garages accessed by rear alley and front onto a green court require 1 additional parking space and shall be provided unless otherwise approved by the city. So I'll come back to this and try to show you a graphic on that. Basically, the guest parking, if you take the detached townhomes, the attached common alley, the attached individual, and you divide those by 3, then you'll end up with 68 or approximately 69 guest parking that's required. And they do provide that. What's a little different is where I've tried to show the blue arrow up here. That's last section of code I read. It says to have 1 parking space for every townhome unit that faces a green space. We went through and talked with the applicant on it, and we have a graphic to show it. Not all of the townhomes have green space. There are not 128 of them that do. There's really 49 that do, so we took the 49 plus the 68, and you come up with 117 guest parking that they would have to have. However, they're asking if they can do 103 spaces, which would be 14 spaces less. Staff is comfortable with that, considering all of the garages that they have. They do have public streets where they can park on it, and then they have met the guest parking, and then they've tried to meet this for the green court areas, the green space. There were about 8 residents that came to the Planning Commission, and they were in opposition to the project, and they each had a chance to speak. And generally, they are concerned about aesthetics, traffic, crime, safety, property values. And then one of the residents submitted an opposition letter, and that's in your packet. I won't read that, but just to make you aware. This is just showing the cover of the master plan for this proposed Black Ridge Cove. It's about 38 pages. Just because of volume, I didn't put it in the slideshow, but it's in your packet. Now, here's a graphic work with the applicant on. And basically what this is trying to show is the purple areas. We looked at all of the layout and where we felt there was green court area or faced upon an area here that's nice aesthetics, where you've got the stream going along and rock and landscape. And that is how we came, if I go through all of the calculations here, which I'm trying not to bore you with, come up with 49 units to meet that part of the code. And then this is just an enlargement of it if you need to look at that and if we need to bring it back. These are the cross sections that are proposed. I'll let the applicant address that if there's any questions on them. I won't dwell on this for long. There's a section on walls and fences, but it's color-coded to show what the heights of walls are within this project. And then this shows the detached elevations, the architecture for the conceptual elevations, the detached units. I also have this in here where staff is looking at the setbacks. I'll make sure it meets code and for us to analyze it. And then this is showing elevations of what the attached units would look like, the townhomes. And there's a lot of variation here, and there's a lot of articulation, and it adds for an interesting structure. And then this, what's a little different here, this gives you more of a 3D rendering perspective. And then also added is a conceptual color palette. I did put behind the mayor and the rest of the council the materials and color boards. One of them is pretty heavy, so you might want to be careful. The one that the mayor's looking at there.
It is heavy. Ready, Brian?
They went above and beyond. But that is their submittal. And you'll notice there's a lot of gray and darker colors. They're trying to blend in with the basalt, the volcanic rock up there, and kind of the theme of that area. I think I've covered most everything on this. Staff will be available for questions. And then also, I'm sure the applicant would like to talk about it. I will jump to page 4 of the staff report. And I'd like to just read what the Planning Commission made as a motion. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the zone change and the project's master plan is presented with following comments and conditions. Number 1, walls. All walls shall meet current codes. Number 2, street lights. The street lights shall be subject to approval from the Power Department. And one of the reasons that came up is in the master plan, that document of 38 pages, they show some real decorative lighting that they'd like to use, but we're saying that they need to get with the city's electrical department and make sure that those are acceptable. And I think one of the reasons is for standardization of switching out lights, so they'll have to meet that. Number 3, parking as presented is sufficient and is recommended to be approved, which is 410 garage spaces and then 103 guest spaces instead of the 117, but they're like 85% of meeting, and we felt that it was reasonable. 4, amenities. Amenities as presented are recommended for approval. Building designs are recommended for approval. 6, colors and materials are recommended as presented. And 7, I didn't have a slide to show you, it's in a packet, but basically they have 2 monument signs for the master plan community, and they'll have to go through a sign permit for that, but Planning Commission looked and talked about that and felt that there was no issues there. The one thing I did mention in this report, I tried to keep it brief, is the original parking concept that was presented at Planning Commission. We spent a lot of time talking about parking because it was confusing the way it was presented, and basically the applicant was wanting to count the parking garages and then count all the spaces in the driveways, and we came up with this astronomical number, and it was just kind of confusing. So that does appear in the master plan, but that is no longer current. What I've showed you for the calculations and these slides in your report is what's current. So I think that concludes staff's comments and available to answer questions or have the applicant.
So
also.
first of all, any questions for staff, for Ray, council?
Ray, you mentioned in your presentation that a lot of the residents that live nearby had some concerns, and you cited some of the issues that were addressed. And I just want to touch base on the drainage issues and the pylons that will be required because of the clay that was addressed in this particular site. And the builder-developer assumes full responsibility for that design and this geological reports that what he's going to put in there, right?
Wes will talk about the hillside and a geotechnical report, and they'll have to adhere to that report. So I hope that answers you.
Yeah, just the no liabilities extending to the city as far as they're going forward. Fully
I
understand
can't
it.
speak to the liabilities, but between our legal department and the geotechnical and our development services.
Okay,
You're good. Thank you.
all right. Any other questions for Ray? All right, we'll allow the applicant to come forward if he'd like to and make any comments or answer any questions that we may have. And I don't know that you need to say too much, but you're welcome to say whatever you'd like to, Isaac. I think Ray's done a nice job of presenting it. But.
Yes, thank you. So Isaac Barlow for the record. And I think Ray did an excellent job of presenting what we were thinking here. The only thing I want to add to it is just to basically give a little bit of the idea behind this development, and that is to create some housing that I guess is in the attainable realm. That's really some of the beginning housing that we believe will be part of the housing used for a lot of the employment up on Tech Ridge. And of course, giving just a different option of housing than what is intended, than the residential housing intended to be built on Tech Ridge. So we were targeting something in between, you know, what we see around St. George today and the modern that we're pushing on Tech Ridge. So something that's kind of partial modern, but still fitting into a little more traditional housing. And one thing that you'll notice is that our target is really I guess the demographic we're targeting for employment on Tech Ridge. It's not single-story housing because we're not targeting retirement homes. We're targeting more of what we feel like is for the employment up on Tech Ridge.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Isaac, council?
I love the colors.
Yeah, I do
Thank
too.
you.
Classy.
Jimmy, anything?
Some of the concern from the neighboring subdivision was the open space or the future development area.
Yes.
Can you speak to anything of that?
Sure. I can speak to, so I talked to a lot of the neighboring residents, and that was the majority of the concern, was that space to the, directly west on Indian Hills. And what I expressed to them is we purposely didn't include that space. Some of their concerns were, if we develop that space, can we make sure to not use the road connecting in between, because that was shown on some of the graphics. We explained that we don't have a desire to connect the road in between. We're happy to have them completely separate entrances. And then at this point, we don't know yet whether or not we will develop that space at all. So it's a future planning, and the reason being is we're addressing all the soils issues as they are in the current development, and that area had a little bit greater concentration of those soils issues, so we chose not to even deal with it right now, and it's possible we may never do anything with it, but we'll have to evaluate that on a future date. That was the majority of their concerns.
And where this is a planned development residential, if that were to happen, it'd have to come back to the council, right,
Mhm.
staff? Okay.
That's right.
Good.
That's right.
Looks very beautiful.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Isaac? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. A lot of work been done on this, and with staff as well. So yes, Wes, do you want to come forward then and
Yeah, let me.
do the rest?
Yeah, so the next item is a request for a hillside development permit to allow the development of the subdivision called Black Ridge Cove that Ray has presented. Let's see. So here is their slope analysis map, which we, is just part of the hillside development permit. The yellow is less than 20%. Then there's a little darker yellow you can see, that's the 20 to 30. This is the 30 to 40, that tan or orangish color. And then the darker red there is over 40%. So other than these areas here, for the most part, they stayed within the 20%. They went to Hillside, as I recall, the Hillside, it allows to the Hillside Committee, if there's elements like this on the site that may have slopes greater than the 20%, they can, if they're non-contiguous or just part of a wash or a small outcropping, the Hillside can look at those and make the recommendation to remove those and not count those as part of that, which they did on these areas here, on these small incidental areas there. They also had to provide a rockfall study, and I can't remember. Anyway, they've provided that rockfall study. None of the development lies within the rockfall line, so they're outside of the rockfall hazard. And they also had to provide a slope stability, and they've provided that as well, and they would be required to follow the recommendations in that study. With Councilman Baca's question, there was a fair amount of clay material in here. They gave out some options to do piers or to over-X or bring and fill and cap that clay. They wanted, I believe it was, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, about a 17-foot difference between the clay and the finished grade. So they have come in and they have filled this area so that they do have that. Where they couldn't get it filled, they actually went in and over-excavated it and then brought in the material to get them above that 17. So they provided, per the geotechnical report, that cap over the clay that was required per the geotechnical report.
Questions, council? Ed, I believe you were probably at Hillside, weren't you, as part of this?
Yes, sir.
Any comments?
No, all the concerns have been addressed quite well, and I know Isaac and his group have really done a good job in trying to respond to all the citizens there, and it's just a great project.
Okay. Council, any thoughts? Areas of concern, any discussion you want to have?
I would just say that that whole area has changed a lot since I used to drive a tractor up and down Indian Hills Drive. And now there's a golf course on the farm.
How old were you when you were driving that tractor?
Am I allowed to say here?
Sure. Statute of
I
limitations.
probably started driving a tractor when I was 10 or 11, but
Yeah.
That's when I started.
That's awesome.
You know, Mayor, I got to tell you this. I was talking to an old banker friend of mine that lived in California, and when Jimmy had gone to California to seek his fortune and fame, the one thing that stood out in the minds of these investors up there was they needed to have somebody drive the tractor on a particular spot, and they said that kid from Utah, he was gold for us. Yeah.
All right. Jimmy, anything else you were going to say?
no, not that's relevant.
Let me. Well, when does that ever stop us, right? I don't know. Are there any? There's not a public hearing for this. The public hearing was done at Planning Commission. But are there any people, any residents that would care to make comments on this that are from the neighborhood? I'd entertain a couple of comments if there's anyone that would like to make them about things that maybe they don't feel have been addressed. This is your big chance. Seeing none, then council, are you ready to make a motion? Any further discussion or clarification?
These need to be made separately, I assume?
Yes.
And in order?
Right, you'd have to do the two motions with the zone change first, subject to the hillside approval as well.
Correct?
The hillside, the zone would go first, right?
Gotcha. I'll go ahead and take a stab at it then. We'll go ahead and make a motion to change the zoning from R110 to PDR on approximately 78.6 acres for the development of the Black Ridge Cove, subject to the approval of the hillside permit.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jimmy and a second by, was that you, Ed?
Yes, sir.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, starting with Betty this time, say aye.
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 That motion carries unanimously. And now, do I have a motion on the hillside permit?
I'll just go ahead again, Mayor, if that's okay,
You bet.
and make a motion to approve the hillside permit for the development of the Black Ridge Cove.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, second by Betty. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Sounds like you can move forward. Isaac, thank you. Thank you for your work, and thanks to our staff and all others involved. All right, I believe we're on to number 7.
Item number 7, consider approval of an ordinance amending the plan development commercial zone on approximately 3.7 acres located at approximately 1150 South, 250 West to develop Blackstone Hotel. And similar to the last item, this is number 7, and there is an associated hillside permit request, which is number 8 on the agenda. So I'd like to present this one, and Wes do the hillside like we just did. So again, on the screen, kind of a summary, there's a related hillside permit request. This request is a request for a zone change amendment to allow development of a 4-story hotel with an associated 2-story parking garage. This review is for the site plan, for the 2-dimensional elevations, for the renderings, for the colors and materials. The operation, it's proposed to be a hotel, I believe by Marriott, and will function as a typical hotel, but it'll be a condominium ownership by about 122 owners. And it should be noted that room rentals will need to comply with city code, and limited stay to not exceed 28 days. The owner is Black Ridge Development. This is the general vicinity. Here's Bluff Street. Here's Black Ridge Drive. And the red is showing where the parking garage would be, and the green area is showing where the hotel would be. And a close-up of that. And then for reference, as I assume you're all well aware, this is a Maverick, the newest Maverick that was built on Bluff. This is just showing the general plan as commercial. The colors red and green here are not general plan colors. They're just highlighting where the project is. And the same for the zone. It's all plan development commercial, but I've got the red and green here just to have it stand out. I won't spend time on this slide, but let you know that it's available. This is color-coded by the developer, showing over excavated areas and the depths that they anticipate. And then this is the cross-section the developer or Wes can kind of talk about in detail, is basically showing how they're going to step and rebuild that wall to be a retaining wall behind Maverick and this property. This is a 3D rendering conceptually showing what it would look like as you enter the hotel property. And then inside, looking at the property, you can see the height of the building, the elevations, the architectural style, and then a pool and looks like a splash pad area. This shows that you want to compare the top illustration with the bottom. This shows the south and the grading proposed, and then this shows how the finished design of the building would sit in on it. And then this is the north perspective without any construction, and then the building. And in the west, the same, no construction, and then the finished perspective. This is a reference of the hotel, kind of the floor plan shown for reference. And this is a good cross-section showing gas station here would be Maverick, and the relationship of this project to it. Elevations. We can always come back to these. I'm just kind of quickly going through them. This is what it would look like from the south. This is what it would look like from the west. And this was the first illustration I showed in here as you would drive in, the check-in, where it looked like a single story, but it's actually, you can have 2 stories to 3 stories to 4 stories here as it drops down. And then another perspective of it, similar to the one I showed you that was colored. And this basically is showing landscape areas, and we'll want to talk about landscaping and watering. This is a nice rendering to show what it would look like if approved and constructed. Again, relationship to Maverick there. And I just showed a little closer in case that's helpful. And you'll want to be talking about the retaining walls and how they plan to do that. And another view from Black Ridge, and then from Black Ridge looking down towards Bluff Street. And a night view. And the color material board is shown on the screen. It's also behind you there. And that one, I guarantee, is not as heavy as the last one. This is a recommendation that the Planning Commission gave to the City Council. I'm going to read it. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the zone change as requested, consisting of conceptual site plan as presented, the 2-dimensional building elevations, the 3D building renderings, the colors and materials, the conceptual landscaping, and dark sky lighting requirements for proposed Blackstone Hotel, and associated 2-story parking garage. The Planning Commission recommends adopting the staff comments and conditions in the packet regarding the site plan. Also, the recommendation is made with the condition that the project meet all conditions of the Hillside Committee, as well as the recommendations of the developer's private geotechnical report and all recommendations to meet a safety factor 1.5, including number 1, going before City Council. The developer's geotechnical engineer shall provide an amendment to the report that states, based on soil and geologic conditions on the site, they recommend approval of the hotel project on this property, and a proposed development project will meet the required 1.5 safety factor. Wes will address that with the Hillside. Number 2, the city at its option may seek a third-party review of the developer's geotechnical engineer's report and recommendations. 3, all designs, construction drawings, and development shall follow technical recommendation of the Hillside Review Board and the independent engineers, and shall again meet the required 1.5 factor of safety. And 4, developer will recommend an indemnification agreement in favor of the city with terms acceptable city if city requires it. So that was quite a bit, but spent a lot of time in Planning Commission on that, and that is the recommendation. I'm going to jump to the staff report, see if I missed anything outstanding. A lot of details will be filled in as Wes talks about the site and the soils and the issues of concern and ancient landslide areas and how that affects the project. The use is an approved use, a hotel and a planned development commercial zone. There is a narrative from the applicant here, and representatives are here to also answer technical questions. As a brief summary, I think that concludes staff's comments.
Thank you, Ray. Any questions, first of all, council?
Well, they've done a beautiful job. It was amazing how, on one of the first slides, the building itself looks like it fits
Really well.
in with
huh?
the rock. And then there was another one as well, that, well, the gradation of how it looks low and then goes high. It's really nice.
Any other questions? Okay. We want to, Wes, are you going to address the other issues?
Right there. Okay, item 8 is a request to consider approval of a hillside development permit to allow development of a hotel located approximately 1150 South, 250 West in Zone PDC. And this is a request for a hillside development permit. I'm just going to give you a little background. Originally, when they did the report for this, they did their analysis, and their report came back that they could only reach a factor of safety of 1.1. Now, the standard in the industry is 1.5 on a factor of safety. They couldn't come to that, and so we went back and forth and said, you know, we're not comfortable unless it meets that factor of safety. They went back and did some more analysis, did a lot of research, got to give them credit, they did a lot of research on how in other areas what they've done to deal with, like, because it's on a landslide, and that was a real concern. And so they went back, did a lot of research, and came back with a different analysis. And so Cameron and I met with Wayne and Jim from AGEC, and Jim sat us down like two students in a class, and he drew all the diagrams and all of that, and it was like, man, it was like back in Dr. Rollins' class in college. And I looked at Cameron, and he was asleep, because you mentioned the word geotech, and if it's not traffic, he's asleep. And then I had a glassy-eyed look, and it was like, oh my gosh.
Where's Cameron? Is Cameron here to defend himself?
He can't defend himself.
Ah.
So I had a glassy-eyed look, and it was like, holy cow, this is way over my head. But anyway, so he went through it, and then he kind of dumbed it down for us so we could kind of understand it. But based on their analysis, they've reached a factor of safety, and it's really not slope on this one. It's this geologic hazard in the clay that required the hillside development permit. And based on his analysis, he reached a factor of safety of 1.4 just by his analysis after going through it and so forth. And if you want to know more, we can talk about that. But it wasn't quite the 1.5. So to get him to a 1.5 then requires what's called a secant wall. And I was under the impression originally they would build this massive wall that, because of the slip plane, that would basically act like a dam and not allow that to ever slide, and that was incorrect. Basically, it meant they would drill these fairly large piers down, but I think they're about 30 inches in diameter. They would go down below that slip plane, and then they haven't finalized their study yet because they got to see what the design of the building is. But then they would be spaced so often, and basically what it does is it just reinforces the soil and provides that additional strength that the soil needs to then elevate the factor of safety to 1.5. So they have reached it based on their analysis. Again, we asked them, because their analysis is kind of different than we normally see. Normally when a geotechnical engineer does his study, he looks at this site as though it was completely saturated. And that's when they couldn't reach it. So then he went back and, like I said, did more research and basically came up with the conclusion that there are studies out there that say sometimes you have to basically analyze the soil based on the conditions of the climate you're in, not on a saturated condition. And that's basically what he's done and gone back. And that is why we requested the letter from the geotechnical engineer at the end that basically gives his recommendation on the project. And we do have that now. And so basically Hillside had some comments, and they're in your packet, and they listed a number of recommendations. Two of them the applicant had concerns with was requiring, Hillside threw out the requirement for a deed restriction on the property. Felt like, you know, that way if future property owners purchase the property, they would have some indication as to what, you know, what went on in the study and so forth. They have requested that that not be part of the conditions because they feel like they have reached a factor of safety of 1.5. They can elaborate more. I'm just kind of letting you know. And then they had some concerns with the indemnification agreement based on the same concept that they have reached a 1.5 based on their analysis. But I'll just summarize what.
Hey, Wes, before
Yes.
you go on, just a question. Jimmy and I were wondering, do you, have we had deed restrictions before on things like this with built on clay or slide areas? I don't recall that.
No, not really.
I would not recommend doing a deed
I
restriction.
wouldn't either. Thanks for the legal opinion. Yeah.
So that was their recommendation. Anyways, the Hillside, and so that was when the applicant requested that be not part of the condition. But then I'll get to it. So basically, I just want to read, this is the conclusions of his letter that he wrote. Number one, he says, the site is suitable from a geotechnical engineering and slope stability perspective for construction of the proposed improvements. Reinforcement of the slope, as indicated in the letter, isn't needed in order to achieve a 1.5 factor of safety for slope stability. That would be the secant wall. If future conditions are significantly different than what we have used in our analysis, particularly with respect to grading, surface and subsurface moisture, and exterior loading, we should be contacted so that we can evaluate the impact of the changed conditions. And number four, precautions as indicated in our report should be taken to help reduce the potential for the development of adverse conditions. So as we talked with him, one of the conditions was, as you develop Tech Ridge, that has to be done in a manner to help protect this, that you don't get a lot of infiltration into the ground as that develops. And that was one of the things he was concerned about, was make sure you can get as much drainage either piped off the site, or if you do detention, do it in a way that it's not going to infiltrate down into the soil. That was a concern. And then again, this was dumbing it down for me. You know, I said, well, let's say, remember the Jacob Hamlin home flooded in 18 whatever, and you know the history probably way better than I did. He was probably here in that 40-day event. And I said, well, what happens if that happens again? Is that cause for alarm? And his concern, he said, no, not really. He said, what would cause me to concern is if the climate here changed to more like a northwest climate, like Seattle and that area. And he said, then that would be a cause for concern. But just a heavy storm event would not, on an overall basis, concern. And that's why we asked for the letter and so forth. Anyway, so they did recommend the geotechnical engineer approval of the project based on a geotechnical engineering.
Any questions
You
for
know,
staff?
Mayor, I'd just like to comment, since I see Isaac is still sitting out there, that didn't pass us over, that when he said that with the development of Tech Ridge, how that will impact the drainage and that road that has been discussed to go from Tech Ridge down to Black Ridge would actually be very helpful to this project to keep the water from soaking in or going down that hill. So that's also part of it. So you really are working together in a big vein. So,
Sean, any comments?
We typically don't put a condition on a third party's property as far as development goes. We look at that site and what their drainage requirements are. We'll look at Tech Ridge and whoever develops that as far as their drainage goes. We're always aware of the water situation, but I certainly wouldn't want to have a condition like that that's placed on a third party property as far as how it develops.
Okay. Very good. Being aware is important, and of course, we're aware and involved in both, so, and anything else that's going to be adjacent, so. Any other comments or questions for Wes or staff, council?
Just, Wes, it was interesting when the Hillside Board met up there that they found that there was a water table up there.
There is a water table, which is.
You wouldn't
it's
expect
down
it.
in there, yeah, but it's not as deep as you would think.
Right.
It's really totally surprised me.
Right.
Well, it sounds like they've done their research up there, and it looks like they've done a good job of getting ready to go, so I think they've done a good job.
Yeah, I think so. They put a lot of time and effort into that, make sure it.
You know, one of the comments that was here is that all surface water will be contained within that site, and no water will be allowed to soak into the hillside. They really have done a lot to go into it. Of course, with that big investment like that, I wouldn't see them skipping anything. They seem to have covered quite a bit.
Yeah, and we'll have to work with them. They, you know, just some of the things they required a landscape architect. That was a recommendation of the Hillside, that landscape architect design it. The landscaping, because there are options that said that were out there that could help eliminate, if there was a break, that would help eliminate water, problems from water, from the irrigation. That was one of the recommendations as well. And the other was to keep the drainage pipes solid so you can't get any leakage, and not to do detention or retention on the site. We'll have to figure out how to make that work.
So Wes, you and the rest of the staff, you feel like they've done their due diligence and the homework enough to get to where, I know there's been a lot of meetings and this just didn't happen
Right.
overnight.
No, it didn't. No, I do. I feel like he's really gone back and researched it. He's provided a lot of information, and we feel comfortable with what he's come up with. And then we'll just have to make sure in the end that we require a final grading report in the end. We'll have to just make sure that they sign off that that secant wall, because that gets them to the 1.5, was installed per their recommendations and so forth. And we'll just make that a part, that they address that in their final grading report.
I actually looked up secant wall before your explanation, so I was kind of fascinated by it already, but when you started explaining that, it's like, yeah, that is
Kinda
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And again,
what
I
they can
thought it
do.
was like a massive wall, and he said, no, we're just putting them down close enough together that, it'll provide some extra support in the soil
Yeah.
to get them to that level.
Good stuff.
It's like those amazing things under the Capitol,
Yeah.
Salt Lake, if you've seen them.
Piers,
that's-
yep, you can see them when you go down in the basement. So, would the applicant care to say anything? Don't have to, can if you want. Okay. Council, any questions you have? Otherwise, be ready for a motion again on item 7 first, I would suggest.
You just should see the view from up there, Mayor, how beautiful that is.
Some pretty good renderings here, if you will, too. It's nice to see what you can do digitally and see that. But again, I think the important thing has been all the engineering work that's been done. We want this to be successful if it's approved, and it's a great location. But we do think this will be a precedent for future things that could happen in that area. So I'm glad that the work has been undertaken. Anyone ready to make a motion?
I am, Mayor, if my voice will hold out. I move to approve an ordinance amending the PDC Plan Development Commercial Zone on approximately 3.77 acres located at approximately 1150 South, 250 West to develop the Blackstone Hotel.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Betty and a second. Was that you, Brian? And I'm just assuming that it would be.
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, I don't believe we want to have all of these conditions that were.
Right. That's what I
So-
was going to get to.
Okay, so if
But-
you don't mind, we could have this gentleman, Wes. Sorry, Wes.
Can we introduce you? Wes Jenkins, Sean Guzman.
That's okay. I was on the phone with Cam trying to figure out what a secant wall was too. So it's basically a caisson like a bridge, only not with a bridge.
There you go.
So we want. I wonder if he could go through them and we could say we want that one, we don't want that
I
one.
agree, just to
because I
make
wanna
sure, and
we
then
get it
we'll
right.
ask Betty and Brian if they would be
Okay.
agreeable to those clarifications.
Okay,
Wes?
item 1 was soil safety. It was a follow-up geotechnical written report that provided the factor of safety and showed how they got from 1.4 to 1.5. We do have that report now, so that was one of them. Drainage, the site shall be limited are designed to control on-site drainage through the following methods: limiting landscape irrigation through a professional designer. All piping shall be continuous, that's the solid pipe to limit leakage. A liner shall be installed. They talked about having a swim pool with this. They said a liner should be installed with some detectable warning.
Hey, Wes,
if it leaks.
before you go too far, is this for the first motion?
No, it's for the hillside.
Okay, I want to make sure that we,
Because we made the motion on the item 7
for the zone,
for the zone
okay.
first. So do we need to make any modifications to that, such
No.
as the deed restriction?
No.
So I think we just approve it with the conditions that were requested at Planning Commission, and there would be no deed
No deed
restriction. And should we just do that, and then we can move on?
That would be fine.
Okay, so, is that okay?
Yes, that's a,
Brian, that's okay? Just
Yes.
that one clarification on no deed restriction?
So just one other clarification, because it does say in their planning commission recommendations on this item, also the recommendation is made with the condition that the project meet all conditions of the Hillside Committee. So would it include those or not?
I think the motion would be that you approve the zone change, subject to the hillside permit as approved by the council, and then.
Okay,
you
We
do
can
that.
make any
I'm with
changes
you.
we want.
Okay, perfect.
Sound good?
Subject to that, yes.
Okay, so same with Brian. Now, all in favor, starting with Ed this time, of these amended motions?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Now, we'll go on with item 8 and have you continue to read those
So,
issues. Yep.
in clarification of number 1 that you read, Cameron told me that he hasn't received a final letter with that justification on the safety factor. So it'd be, you said we received it, but I want to still make sure that it's subject to receipt of that final letter.
Right. And he provided, like Cameron said, a copy, and he'd sign it, but I said, we'll need that stamp, so you're right, we'd need that, subject to that. The third one was expansive soils shall be excavated and removed from the site. That would be per the geotechnical study. Anyways, the deed restriction, you've stricken that. Due to the site's geologic hazards, eliminate or limit on-site water detention, which we normally require, so that's something we'll have to work with them, where they're gonna detain or how we're gonna deal with that, but limit that or eliminate it completely. Adjoining properties, during construction, safety methods acceptable to the city shall be instituted to protect adjacent properties. Temporary shoring to be installed during the process to install the Seacamp well system. I think they had some concerns. There were some buildings that, just to the north, they worried that as they excavated, they may impact those buildings. I don't know, that's a question, that's one. The applicant
In that
shall-
one, I just question what that means for us on that. And so while we'll make them adhere to, building standards,
Right.
I don't know that we want to actually spell
Additional-
that as a condition. That's number 6, right?
Right, yeah. Applicant shall work with staff to determine trees that can be installed or those eliminated to reduce the water, irrigation water introduced to the site. Any retaining wall shall be reviewed by staff, and they'll be required to meet all structural design requirements and shall be colored to fit into the immediate areas, natural coloring, example stain or painted to match. So basically, the walls would be colored, and the retaining walls would have to meet city ordinances and requirements, as well as an engineer would have to design those.
Is that item number 7? Or
That's
8.
Yeah.
So are we saying that's okay? Or that's, or staff?
I'm just saying, yeah, that really, it would be, they'd have to be colored like they had requested. It'd have to be designed by an engineer, and it'll have to meet city ordinances and standards.
Staff feel like that is an appropriate,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. All irrigation lines would need to be designed to prevent leakage, and that was part of hiring a professional landscape architect to design the landscaping. And that's number 10 as well. And the applicant shall comply with the recommendations of the geotech report and the drainage study. Obviously, they would have to comply with the drainage study. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, 11 is the geotech report, and 12 is the drainage study. that they would have to comply with. And then one item that was brought up, again, during planning commission was the possibility of an indemnification letter to the city. Again, they requested that that not be part of the conditions. Item number 9 was that the irrigation lines be designed to prevent leakage. Examples, seamless pipe design and possible control system that detects excessive water flow to shut off the system in case of a leak. That was just something that wasn't a condition on that. That was just something that when we met with Jim Nordquist, he just said, you know, as that.
Is that a recommendation from the planning?
No, that was just something that he said, look, city, you know, be aware as that develops that you know, the city owns that property. Make sure that you're judicious in how that's designed and dealt with as far as drainage. That was just from the geotech.
Okay, so it looks like it's just items number 4 and 6 that we would not.
One of those was the
Item number
notation.
4 was the deed restriction and 6 was the adjoining properties.
Okay.
And then, again, they requested, the item that was added during planning commission was the indemnification agreement. They requested that that be stricken.
I'd be curious about your thoughts on that, Adam and Sean.
Well, I'm not sure that there, first of all, I don't believe we have liability. I mean, we've done everything that we can on our end that's required of us to do. So while someone can always file a lawsuit, I don't believe that we have exposure on this. So I don't believe we need an indemnification letter from them.
Adam feels similarly, okay.
Just for clarification, when you indicated a minute ago, they decided that this shouldn't be included. Who's they?
They decided what?
You stated that they decided that this should not be included in the,
The applicant has
comments.
requested elimination.
You
of
mean the
deed-
applicant?
Yes, the
That's
deed
the-
restriction and the indemnification
okay.
agreement.
And so
Those were the
these
two.
items, Sean, that you just listed, are the Hillside Board recommendations, not to be confused with the Planning Commission recommendations.
Right, so on the Hillside Board recommendations, we have item 4 and item 6 that we are not recommending that the council approve. Along with, it sounds like there was a recommendation from the Planning Commission for an indemnification letter, and we would not recommend that you require that as well. Does that make sense?
Clear? Yeah. Any questions on any of those 12 or 13 items? Appreciate you taking the time to do it. So at this point, what I would suggest is, if you're so inclined, a motion, if you're intending to approve the Hillside Development Permit, it would be with those, was it 12, I believe? Wes, was it a total of 12? Yeah, so with the 12 that Hillside had requested, except items 4 and 6, and that we would not also add another condition that the Planning Commission recommended on the indemnification. We would not add that. So I know that's a little messy, but we have that in writing. Council, if you're inclined to make a motion for or against, but if you're inclined, I would include those items.
Okay, Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion to approve a Hillside Development Permit to allow development of a local hotel at approximately 1150 South, 250 West, and Zone PDC, including the 12 items, excluding number 4 and 6, with no indemnification letter.
I think that's clear. That's a motion made by Betty. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Brian. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Good luck. Appreciate all the efforts. Look forward to it. Got a question? Sorry, John, just one question.
Real quick, you're good.
Tyler?
The owner or the developer wanted me to let you know that we do have a Ruth Chris coming. So if you're looking for a good steak, that will be a part of this.
We
The
kind of
pool-
heard that rumor.
The pool will be first class. There will be no pool like this one in town. So that'll be something that you'll want to partake in as well. And my daughter actually.
But no fence jumping, right?
Yeah, no diving off the edge, because you don't know where you'll end up. It might be part of the sea count
Maverick,
wall.
yeah.
And my daughter also works for Soltis Investment Advisors, and she gets the comment all the time, where's your nice hotels in town? Now, that's not to dish the other hotels in town. I'm just saying we have an alternative for those people that like to live really high. So
All right.
we're there. Thank you,
Thank
council.
you. Thank you very much. John?
Next item, item number 9, consider approval of an ordinance amending the general plan from OS open space to LDR low density residential land use designation to column commercial land use designation on approximately 0.77 acres for factory power sports, generally located north of Red Hills Parkway and 700 North and west of 1700 East Street. So this is a general plan amendment. This is the location of the request. Red Hills Parkway is located here. This is 1700 here. This is the zoning on the property. It's currently zoned RE 12.5. The general plan is current LDR, and there's a portion of it here that is also open space. The applicant is the Power Sports, which is located here. Their intention is to expand their business up into this area located here. Looking at it just from this perspective, typically this would kind of be a divider line where we'd say this should be residential. But if you look at some of the pictures that I'll be presenting, there's a real there's a elevation change, and this portion in this property makes much more sense to be commercial when staff looked at it. And so that's the request, is to change that to commercial. Again, the commercial would support these zone changes, which is C1, C2, C3, and then also the PDC. This is showing a close-up of the property. And again, this property would expand into this area here. Looking at some pictures, this is the existing Factory Power Sports. This is their facility that they operate out of now. This is kind of looking from that other street. Again, this drops off down the edge, and that's the location they're requesting to do the general plan amendment. Here's a few of the properties. This is the residential. You can see there's a grade change, and this is much more in line with the other commercial properties in regards to elevation. All the residential around it's built up. And here's just a few pictures showing those elevation changes. And Planning Commission, they heard this, they took public comment, and they recommend approval for this application. Staff also recommended approval, and that concludes staff's presentation on this item if the council has any questions.
Council, do you have any questions on this one? There actually has been some good work done on this, I think, by the staff. Talked about it several times in staff meetings, but any questions? Okay. Well, seeing none, if there aren't questions, I'd just entertain a motion to approve this ordinance, which would be amending the general plan from open space and LDR, as has been shown to us, land use designation to commercial land use designation on these 0.77 acres for Factory Power Sports located generally at Red Hills Parkway and 700 North and west of 1700 East Street.
So moved.
Motion by Jimmy, second by Betty. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, starting with Betty this time, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Good. That'll be nice to have done. Okay, number 10, final subdivision plat.
And as I told the Planning Commission, this may be the last time you ever see a final plat. Who knows? Item 10 is a request to consider approval of final subdivision plat for Bandit Hills subdivision. It is a 12-lot residential subdivision located at Bandit Hills Drive at approximately 2990 East and 3850 South. Zone is R110. All aspects have been reviewed by staff. It meets the conditions of the preliminary plat. and this should give you, maybe it's not. This is what, so this area right here is being proposed to dedicated to the city. It is hillside property. And then this, as you recall, is the rockfall hazard line where no structures or dwellings would be allowed within. And then the white is the developable portions of the property. And then this is the ridgeline setback right there that wouldn't be allowed for any structures within that area.
Questions, council? Ready for a motion?
Motion to approve the final subdivision plat for the Bandit Hills subdivision.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, second by Betty. Any discussion?
Mayor, this is one of 4 items that's on the agenda that has construction, that the plans look very nice and favorable, but it is out in Little Valley area, and I remain concerned about the building of a fire station out there to serve the public safety needs. So I would ask perhaps we get some reassurance from the city manager if he would like to comment on that.
Adam, comments on maybe progress, the status of that Commerce Drive and the fire station?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We continue to discuss this project on a weekly basis at minimum. It's one of the very top of our list, and with the plans for the fire station itself, they're just awaiting structural review, so we're really close on that, and those plans should be complete. And then with Commerce Drive, that's moving along. We've had even another conversation today with one of the landowners. So we're continuing to have those discussions, and hopefully soon.
And I think we're at a point, council and Ed specifically, where, you know, we've got sort of a plan A and a plan B in terms of getting the road moving along. That's really been, you know, the delay. And I think we're allowing plan A to play out for just a minute longer. But then there's a plan B, and I think we could move on that quickly.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to be able to reassure the public, and that's why I want the transparency issue that brought up.
Good, good. Okay, then let's see. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay. Okay. Just want to make sure we're clear. That motion carries unanimously. Okay.
Okay, item 11 is a request to consider approval of final subdivision plat for Desert Hollow Phases 2 and 3. The request, this is located at Rim Runner Drive and Zelda Drive, zone as PDR. All aspects of this final plat were reviewed by staff and meets the conditions of preliminary plat. Again, this is in the Desert Canyons development. Here's your vicinity map. It's kind of on the western edge. Right here is the future school, is the school property where they'll be hopefully building a future elementary school.
The reason Wes mentioned that we may not be seeing these much in the future is because we won't.
Right.
Based on the new Title 10 that we approved last week, staff will approve those based on all the good work that they've done and the Planning Commission and us at the preliminary plat stage. So just wanted to clarify that. Any questions on this, or otherwise I'd be ready for a motion?
Mayor, be happy to move to approve final subdivision plat for Desert Hollow Phase 2 and 3.
Second.
Motion by Betty, second by Jimmy. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12.
Okay, item 12 is a request to consider approval of final subdivision plat for Gateway Commons subdivision. This is an 8-lot commercial subdivision located at Red Hills Parkway at approximately 1600 East, zone as PDC. All aspects of this final plat were reviewed by staff and meets the conditions of preliminary plat. Here's the access right here to Red Hills Parkway, traffic signal right here, and then Cottonwood Springs Road right there.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to move that we approve the final subdivision for subdivision plat for Gateway Commons subdivision.
Second.
Motion by Betty with a second by Brian. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item 13 is request to consider approval of a final subdivision plat for South Rim at Four Master Ridge, Phase 3. This is a 42-lot residential subdivision located at Four Master Drive at approximately 1650 East, Zone is R110. All aspects of this final plat were reviewed by staff and meets the conditions of preliminary plat. Here's Four Master Drive right here. Here is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Church, and there's that subdivision.
Ed, this is in your neighborhood. Any concerns?
That's on the north side of Four Master, right?
South side.
That's
South.
out on the
Yeah.
south
That's the
side, I wanna
south
make sure.
side, yeah. So that's Four
Okay.
Master. They have one little piece right here
Right.
left to
And
develop.
we have a turn-in,
Yeah,
right, turn-in right there.
They have full access right here, and then another access is over here on the other side of the
Right.
church.
And Mayor, the sidewalk will continue all the way down, so the pedestrian safety will be in here. And then when we get on the north side, we'll have a request for sidewalk continuation down there, even though perhaps the developer isn't quite ready, but for safety factors.
Good. Good idea. Ready for a motion, council, if you are?
Motion to approve the final subdivision plat for the south rim at Four Master Phase 3.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, was that you, Ed?
Yes, sir.
Second by Ed. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item 14 is a request to consider approval of a final subdivision plat for the Villas at Sun River St. George Phase 7. It's a 24-lot residential subdivision located at Grayson Drive in the Sun River development located approximately 1190 west. Zone is PDR. Again, all aspects of that plat were reviewed by staff, and it meets the conditions of the preliminary plat. So this is interior to the Villas at Sun River. Just to locate yourself, here is Angel Arch, I think it is. I can't remember. And then here is Sun River Parkway. So it's just south of Sun River Parkway. It's kind of getting to the west or east end of that project.
Yeah, that'd be Angel Arch, I think, on the other
Yeah, I
side.
think that's what it was.
Any questions on
it's
this?
Arrowhead.
Arrowhead?
That's right. I knew it started with an A.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Arrowhead's the main one, and then
Yeah.
Angel Arch comes off that.
Mayor, motion to approve final subdivision plat for the Villas of Sun River, St. George, Phase 7.
Second.
Motion by Betty with a second by Brian. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item 15 is a request to consider approval of a final subdivision plat for White Sands Phase 5. This is a 23-lot residential subdivision located at Mocac Wash Drive and Siler Cactus Drive. Zone is R110. All aspects of this final plat were reviewed by staff, and it meets the conditions of the preliminary plat. So this is White Dome Drive, which is that main road, and this is just north of it with the Nature Conservancy property right here.
Questions, council, on this? Think you know where it is? It's amazing.
Motion to approve the final plat for White Sands Phase 5.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy with a second by Betty. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item 16 is a request to consider approval of a final subdivision plat for White Sands Phase 6. This is a 16-lot residential subdivision located at Country Canyon Drive and, again, Siler Cactus Drive. All aspects of this final plat were reviewed by staff and meets the conditions of the preliminary plat. This is area, I believe it's either donated to the city or dedicated to the city, as this is where the two water lines will go that will feed the future tank on the Nature Conservancy property. So they've dedicated that to the city for those utility lines.
Okay. Questions? Ready for a motion?
Motion to approve of a final subdivision plat for White Sands Phase 6 subdivision.
Second.
Motion by Betty with a second by Jimmy. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item 17 is a request to consider approval of a preliminary plat for Black Ridge Cove, a 204-lot residential subdivision located west of Tech Ridge Development, east of Indian Hills Drive, and northeast of Whisper Ridge. Developers, so I'll show you. So you've already seen this today. They do have, so right here is where, so here's Indian Hills Drive. The proposal is to create a detention basin here to collect the runoff from the north side of the Tech Ridge project and detain it here, and then it would be conveyed in a channel down through here till it gets to Indian Hills Drive where it'd be piped under, and then a future storm drain pipe would then take the drainage out to the Santa Clara River. They are requesting that the city maintain the ditch, as they felt like it's part of just part of the overall project. And because there's a 10-foot multi-use trail that'll come up here and provide access to that detention basin. So they've requested that the city maintain the ditch, own and maintain the ditch and the trail. They also have three, so this is a public street that will lead up to the old airport right there, Cloud Drive. That'll be a public road. This would be a public road up to the detention area and whatever is going to happen here, possible park property. This would be a public road. These three, even though they would be built to city standards, would be private drives because of the guest parking that's required along here and here and here, and then the lack of sidewalk here and I think right through here. We're still trying to work out and see if there's a possible way to make those public roads, because width-wise, everything else are being built to a city standard. It's just the parking on the side is something we've normally not accepted in the past as part of a public road, and then the lack of sidewalk here and here. Their argument was, well, you do have the trail here that replaces the sidewalk. We're still trying to work through that with them. They also, I had them cut a couple of cross sections. You can see the hillside here and here that comes down into them, and they provided a cross section showing that so this one, and I'll try to go fast, I'm sorry. This cut is a cross section through here showing how they'll deal with the drainage. So they'll have a two-tiered rock wall, a drainage ditch here, and then to collect the drainage off of here. We asked them to provide a little wider area here so that, and then two access points, one here and one here, so that they can get equipment up in there and take care of that ditch. The ditch would be HOA property, and their proposal is to dedicate this eventually to the city, this hillside property that's left undisturbed. And then the ditch over here is a cross section here. It's not quite so substantial, the elevation change, but again, with the ditch along the backside and a wide enough area, hopefully to get equipment in there to take care of those. The hope is to avoid a shadow mountain issue where we have that ditch that comes right on the backside of those properties and it's difficult to maintain.
Yeah.
So we've looked at, that's why we requested the two access points here and here so they can get up, and then we'll have to figure out how to get up into this one too, so you can get equipment up in there to maintain that. They also will be required to provide a deceleration lane from Indian Hills Drive here, and then we'll have to look at the improvements that would be required here for a left turn lane. Their traffic study ultimately, with the build out of Tech Ridge and this, shows a traffic signal being required here at full build out of Tech Ridge and this development. So that's something we'll have to work with them as far as responsibility of that traffic signal and city and developer participation.
Okay, so with some of those, the idea that some of those items would be resolved before final plat?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And staff recommends approval at this juncture.
Yeah. Be nice to see if we
all
can
of them will be resolved before final plat.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd make a motion to approve, Mayor, the preliminary plat for Black Ridge as articulated and outlined.
Very good. Motion by Ed with a second by Brian. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item 18 is request to consider approval of preliminary plat for Elmwood Estates Phase 8. This is a 12-lot residential subdivision located at the intersection of 3230 South and Crimson Ridge Drive. Again, the developer, this is the one that came before Hillside. So this is the extension of Crimson Ridge Drive. Just to locate yourself on your map, here's Crimson Ridge Drive. Here's the park. Here is the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints Church. And then that's the extension of it that way. And so it's the extension of Crimson Drive to the north, Crimson Ridge Drive to the north. Again, as in Hillside, they were requesting to dedicate that open space area to the city. I did talk to them and said, if the city, because it'll show up on the other plat too, that there's a portion here, and then you have the Teakwood subdivision. I did talk to them, and if the city didn't want that, did they have any problems with just extending the lot lines of these lots up to the Teakwood, just putting that property within the private property with a no build, no disturb area on the final plat as another option if the council decided they didn't want to take that property.
The airport's just on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah, the airport, so then you have a subdivision here, and then you get to the airport ridge right there.
And I would just say, Mayor, and comment to that, if you drive around town after our last big boom, you'll see that even those properties that we retained, people encroach on, if we add those into their lots, they don't look at those notes, nobody's policing the no disturb, and someone comes in and says, I want to build a terrace up there.
So they just do it.
Yes, you can, there's one that we all see over on the north side of the Black Ridge on the west side there that that happened on, and it was actually city property there. So I would just say that hopefully we will, if it's property that we would be acceptable, so we would just take that property, have them deed that to us, I guess I'd say, and not include in the lot, because that will reduce those types of incursions that happen when someone thinks, hey, my lot goes to the top of the ridge.
Okay. It's a good point.
And this is also in Little Valley area.
Yes.
It is.
This is, yeah, did you say, it's just Crimson Ridge, it's right at the end.
Yeah,
So far.
it'll be the
end.
extension of Crimson Ridge
Yeah.
Drive down to the north, or to the north.
Do you want us to, if they make a motion to approve, Sean, you want us to say anything about the property issue, the city property issue in that?
Yeah, that we would encourage staff that if it's possible to
Have
have
that
that
be-
property.
Okay,
deeded.
get that property and have that,
And they're willing to dedicate it to the city. I just threw that out there as an option in case that was something that, we didn't feel comfortable
yeah, I
with.
think we'd rather own it.
Okay.
Yeah, than have it.
It's
be-
easier to protect, like
Yep.
Sean said, and it's
Yep.
easier to, people have a tendency, it's my property, I want to utilize it, and it becomes more of an enforcement issue.
Yep. Okay, anyone, ready for a motion?
Move to approve a preliminary plat for Elmwood Estates Phase 8.
And would you direct staff to resolve the property issue? The
Purchase the
adjoining
property.
property that,
Okay.
we'd like that dedicated to the city.
Okay, we'll do that.
Second.
Motion by Betty with a second by Jimmy. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 19,
Okay, 19 is a request to consider approval of a preliminary plat for Entrada at Snow Canyon Chaco South subdivision, which is a 47-lot residential subdivision located within the Entrada development south of Ticini Drive and north and east of the boundary line between St. George and Santa Clara City. So here's the boundary line between St. George and Santa Clara. As you recall, this property here was recently annexed from St. George into Santa Clara. So the red line represents the outline of the subdivision right here. This is the layout. They do have, I thought it, right here. So they do have a sewer line that will extend from this development down and tie into the sewer line within 2000 North or Pioneer Parkway as it is in Santa Clara. This would be subject to staff making sure they're comfortable with the agreement between Santa Clara and St. George and the developer regarding a line within the city connecting to a sewer line in Santa Clara. And you can see right here, they've also extended it further to the west here for possible future development to be able to drain into that line. So it'd have to be subject to that agreement between both the cities and the developer as owning and maintaining that line.
has there been any conversation with Santa Clara yet about that?
Yeah, there has, and the applicant has said they do have an agreement. I talked to Cade, and he said he had not read it yet, and so just wanted to make that a condition that the city approves that agreement.
Okay.
And then they have some areas here that they would just, that are kind of remnant parcels that they will just dedicate to the common area of the Entrada Association. They looked at them as possible future mailbox locations or something like that to utilize those.
Okay. Questions, council? If not,
Sure.
ready for a motion?
Sean, is that Entrada Association up there where you're at? You involved with that?
No, he's in Dixie Ups.
Mayor, motion to approve the final preliminary plat for Entrada at Snow Canyon, Chaco South.
Second.
Motion by Betty with a second by Jimmy. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, item 20 is request to consider approval of preliminary plat for Rosewood Estates Phase 6. This is a 7-lot residential subdivision located at intersection of 3050 South and Crimson Ridge Drive. Again, like Elmwood Phase A, so here is just so you can see where it is on an aerial. This is that ridge line again that we talked about. Again, they're proposing to dedicate that to the city, that open space, again, right there, which would just be extension of the Elmwood subdivision.
So any questions? Otherwise, accept a motion to approve, and again, subject to having the property owner developer dedicate the back side of that to the city.
Motion to approve the final plat for Rosewood Estates Phase 6 with the, only with the dedication of the open space to the city.
Second.
Perfect. Jimmy makes the motion, Betty seconds. Discussion on the motion?
No, Jimmy's just got all that growth out there in Little Valley, boy. It's just not stopping.
Yeah.
Crazy.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 21?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, item 21 is request to consider approval of a preliminary plat for a 17-lot, or for Stonecliff Phase 17, which is a 22-lot residential subdivision located within the Stonecliff Plan Development, intersection of Granite Way and the extension of 1540 South. So here's your Stonecliff development as it sits currently, and then it would be just extended here in the red outline area. So this is the subdivision. This, if I can go back, you can see that this is a public road right there that terminates right now. It'll connect with their development. Their proposal is to put a crash gate here to kind of delineate between the private and the public, but then it would allow for fire access in an emergency that they could get through here. You can see they do have a number of retaining walls. Again, these lots are similar to what was in 16A, where they would have under garages, is what they had originally proposed, here with the lots fronting on this.
Boy, you knew I was going to ask about fire access, didn't you?
Yeah, so they would get their fire access right through there. I mean, they'd leave that open so that fire could get in there if they needed to.
Any other questions, council? Ready for a motion?
Motion to approve the preliminary plat for Stonecliff's Cliff Phase 17.
Second.
Motion by Betty with a second by Jimmy. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 22.
Okay, item 22 is a request to consider approval of a preliminary plat called Teakwood Estates Phases 5 and 8. This is a 78-lot residential subdivision located at 3180 South and Maple Mountain Drive. So here's the location of it right here. The two that we just looked at, Elmwood and Rosewood, would sit right here. This is on the upper side of what I'm going to call that smaller ridge right here. So that would be Elmwood here and then Rosewood here. These areas here, as it went to Hillside, there was a lot of slope that was going to have to be cut or filled along here, and the Hillside recommended that this area be rocked with rock that matches the surrounding. And if the homeowners come in and build a rock wall or build a wall, that the wall needs to kind of match that same condition, a rock wall that would, or a wall that would have the same kind of color to match the surrounding area, whether it's rock or concrete. They are proposing to dedicate this open space area here to the city. They do have this trail that will come along Maple Mountain Drive. They changed the name here because it changes, but it'll come up and it'll be along the back side of these lots right here. The red line is the rockfall hazard line that we discussed at Hillside. It sits on the back property line of these lots right through here. And then this would act like, this trail would then act like similar to Maple Mountain, where the drainage comes off. It'll be captured along that trail and then be conveyed to where it needs to go, possibly, I think down this way is where it ends up, going, plus that would provide access to clean and maintain that little drainage area here. And then again, this is the phases to the north. This is Rosewood that we already reviewed, and again with the trail extending through there with the slope and the ditch along there. The planning, or the water department did request, this will be served off of the airport tank. What this area is served off doesn't provide the pressure they need here. Water department's requesting that there is supposed to be a second connection that comes off of Bandit Hills Drive, comes down through here into Teakwood Phase 2, and then extends through here that will provide service here. They have one connection here. They're asking for a second redundant connection, so we'll have to work that out with them and get that water line installed. It already went through Hillside and council for approval, the installation of that, because it's in the Hillside area. So water department's requesting that that be installed with this subdivision here so that they have a redundant feed from the airport tank.
That's just smart.
Yeah. Yep.
Glad they're catching things like that. Yep.
And then again, this would be the area that would be the backside of those two subdivisions, that lower ridge line that they would request to then dedicate to the city, and then this would go to the city eventually as well.
Questions, council?
Well, Mayor, you know, my concerns have been satisfied with the fire coverage out in that area. This remains more homes out in that area, but I would, with the assurances given today, I'd go ahead and make a motion to approve this plat for Teakwood Estates Phase 5 and 8 as articulated with the restrictions or concerns.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Ed with a second by Brian. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Item 23. That's pretty, I think it's self-explanatory. It's to appoint our election workers for the general election to be held on November, what is it? Jimmy and Betty?
5th.
And Ed? Oh, November 5th. All right. I knew you would know the date. 2019. State law requires that all elections be appointed by the city council at least 15 days prior to the election, which this is, just barely. Staff is recommending that we approve the list of the poll workers as have been attached and part of our agenda. Any questions on that? If there are, Christina can answer them.
Yeah.
Far fewer than we've probably ever had because there are only 5. Because we only have one location, just a reminder, and that is at the Dixie Center. And that's based, it's weird, I know. Joe would not be happy about this, Brian.
Nope.
Jimmy is not happy about this, but. Yeah? When? All right.
We did ask that question. We asked down at Sun River, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Was that just last night?
Last night.
And if they liked it, and almost everybody raised their hand.
All right.
I love a polling booth. I started when we first got married. We've not missed an election. Missed a meeting, but not an election. But it is convenient. And I have to say, when we lived in Salt Lake and that came in the mail and it was snowing outside, and cold, awful, and I could just check it off and put it in the mailbox. It was fabulous. I think it's just something we have to get used to. But
It certainly did improve participation. What was it, 28% or something like that, which is a lot better than the previous one, which was 10 or something like that. So that's good,
You know,
especially if we're informed. So we need to be informed voters. But Ed?
as Jimmy noted, last night, the citizens, when we asked for showing of hands on that, I was really surprised at how many people were in favor of voting by mail.
Well, and aside from us spending a bunch of money on new machines or something, we really, with the county's decision not to either extend the life of or buy new machines, we didn't have a lot of choice. So I think, we'll try it, see how it goes. And and also, thanks to Christina, we will have some I voted stickers that are will be located at the drop-off boxes, right? And at the Dixie Center. And we'll have them here.
Because that was my biggest concern.
Yep. You want to be able to have those, huh?
I
Yeah.
I love that.
I do too. So she has some. Yeah.
Nice.
Could someone make a motion to appoint the election workers as presented?
So moved?
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, seconded by Ed. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I do have one appointment. I'd like to ask the council to make a motion to approve Ray Draper as a member of the Planning Commission.
I make a motion to approve, Mayor.
Second.
Okay, the motion is by Ed, seconded by Betty. This would be immediately, by the way, and I believe we were going to do this for a 2-year term. Were we not on this one? It doesn't matter, but if we need to stagger anything.
Yes, we'll need to. So if you want to make the appointment to December 31st, we will have in December the ordinance change along with a list of those appointments you're going to make, and you could simply then appoint Ray to one of those
Okay.
terms.
So I'll let him know that he's really only appointed technically through December of this year.
And then you'll make
And then
that
we'll
appointment.
reappoint him
I believe we'll be doing that on the 5th
of December.
of December.
Okay, very good. We will make some adjustments if you're so inclined, council. And probably the plan is to reduce the terms to 2-year terms. I can't remember which meetings we've talked about this. That will just simply make it, I think, a little bit more nimble, easy for them and easy for us to make changes as would be necessary.
Mayor, I just take note that we did approve the changes and adopted the Chapter 10 changes in the workshop meeting. And so thanks to our city attorney, Mr. Guzman, and his staff. That's taken a lot of work, a lot of time, and I'm sure that
Victoria
public-
really spent a lot of time on that
Yes, she
and
did.
worked with John on that, so
So thank you very much.
those two deserve the credit.
Clarify for me, did we vote on, I didn't think so. Okay, so any other discussion on Ray Draper Planning Commission appointment? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll let him know, and he'll be ready to start. So I don't know who will contact him, John. Who should? Okay, I'll give you his cell. If you don't have it, I'll get it to you. In fact, he said he would be here tonight. I said no, because you never know when it'll be. So anyway, he's ready to get going. Okay. All right. Adam, anything else? Nope. Reports, council, do you have any? I don't believe, first of all, I don't believe we need a closed meeting. Okay, right? Okay. Yeah. Anything, Betty? Any reports? Jimmy? I don't have anything.
I just thank our city manager, Adam, for all the work that's being done to get that fire station going over there on Commerce Drive. We really do appreciate it.
We'll get it eventually.
It's coming.
And I just want to let you know that Councilwoman Randall is feeling better. I got a text from her saying either turn on my mic or talk louder, so she's nagging at me tonight. So she must be feeling a little bit better.
That's good. We're glad. Hope she gets some good rest. All right, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Who made it? Did you make it? Oh, you made it. Brian makes a motion to adjourn. Do we have a
Second.
second? Ed seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's an undebatable motion. We're adjourned. Now, next week, again, will be a work meeting, 4 p.m. All right? And we'll have to talk about schedule for the rest of the year. We'll do that next week. So we're good.